Welcome to American Common Sense, a fun look at the state of American politics, inspired by Thomas Paine's Common Sense from 1776, hosted by James Humphreys. Welcome back to another episode. Today's episode is going to be slightly different than the ones we've done in the past for the last 8 or 9 episodes. Instead of talking just about politics and constitution stuff only, we're going to talk about some policy work, primarily focused on privatization of government work. That being said, though, before I do that, I want to share something really cool. This morning, I got a text from a friend of mine from Lithuania, and he and another friend of ours from Lithuania stayed in my home several years ago, and one of the things they loved about being in the United States was they loved seeing American flags flying everywhere. Not just car dealerships, but they saw them on grocery stores, in people's homes, throughout neighborhoods. They were flying all the time, and they loved seeing that. They loved the patriotic symbolism that was shown. And there's a lot of patriotic symbolism that exists in Lithuania as well, but like most European countries, they only shared that on national holidays and so forth. However, as a result of Russia's clearly illegal invasion of Ukraine, something I hope our government will remember in the near future, the reality is that patriotism has been galvanized, especially in places like the Baltics, a little bit in Poland and so forth. And so today, he sent me a picture of apartment block after apartment block that were flying Lithuanian flags, some American flags, some Ukrainian flags, but lots of Lithuanian flags hanging in windows and on balconies everywhere. Lots of pride in what is happening in the country. They're very happy for who they are, for the freedom that they enjoy, and I hope that we will continue to be a part of NATO in a way that will substantially ensure that Russia does not invade them yet again. That being said, let's get back to the topic at hand. I want to talk about privatization. Elon Musk and his Doge team have been doing all sorts of things through government in the last few months, but he's talked a lot in the last couple of weeks about the idea of privatizing things like Amtrak and the Postal Service and so forth. And I want to talk about that privatization, whether it works or doesn't work. And there are places where it works and places where it doesn't work. But I want to give you some examples. 3 years ago, there was a video done by CNBC on the state of American airports and how terrible they were and why they were awful. And they did this whole long, like 20-minute video on all the great airports of the world and why America's airports sucked. And their conclusion was they would only stop sucking if we privatized all of the airports and sold them to companies. So I hate to say it, but they were 100% completely wrong. Because every actual privatized airport that exists in Europe are primarily in Britain, and they're all garbage. Everyone hates them. They're just crap. Privatized airports that they talked about in places like Berlin, for example, are definitely privatized. Privatized by a company that owns 90% of it, and the government owns like a 10% share. Only if you dig a little deeper, actually do research, you'll notice, if you check the ownership of the Berlin airport, there's this large limited corporation that has it. And the limited corporation's primary stakeholders are the state of Brandenburg, the city of Berlin, and the Federal Republic of Germany. So the government owns the company that owns the airport. So it's still government owned. They can just make a profit on it as opposed to making it as a non-profit situation. And that's the case you see all over the place. You see it in Zurich, you see it in Prague, you see it in Lisbon. Very few of the actual airports they discussed were privatized. And the privatized airports, places like Gatwick and Manchester, Glasgow, they're terrible airports and everyone hates them. The best airports in the world, ones that everyone likes to make fun of, places like Singapore's Changi Airport, Seoul's Incheon Airport, Dubai or Qatar, those are all government-owned airports. Now, no place in the United States is going to have amazing dangling inverted waterfalls and indoor zoos like you see in some of these international places that go all out when they only have one real transportation hub to get people in and out from their country. But it should be known that quietly, carefully, comfortably, and affordably, well, except in the case of New York, affordably, the airports throughout this country have been making radical changes and improvements. Houston Intercontinental has gone through like a $2.5 billion renovation. It's really impressive. No cost to taxpayers. Denver has gone through an $8 billion renovation. It's adding 34 gates, redoing their concession stands over 12 years. Again, no dollars to taxpayers. Salt Lake City International Airport literally replaced its entire airport, just kept the runways with a brand new terminal, 4 phases, all had to be done concurrently because it was so busy and so popular. $5.5 billion, no taxpayer money involved. Los Angeles, preparing for the Olympics, is doing an $18 billion improvement. I'm not sure they'll ever really fix LAX. It's kind of a disaster, but they're going to make it a lot better than it was, and new people movers, and all sorts of things that are off site from the airfield. A lot of money being invested to make that better. All three of the major airports in the New York area are getting redone. Kansas City replaced its entire airport with a brand new field. Indianapolis replaced its airport with a whole new field. New Orleans replaced its airport with a whole new field. Even old hubs like Pittsburgh and Memphis that were really large airports that have fallen to the wayside as they've lost their hub status have been remodeling to the tune of $1, $2, or $3 billion to reduce their footprint and improve services and connectivity for their passengers and the people coming in their spaces. All across the country, things have been improving. So the idea that privatization is the only way to make those things better doesn't make sense, especially if the owners are being able to do so using the revenue that's generated by the airports themselves without using taxpayer dollars. The same thing should be said if we were to look at things like Amtrak. Now, while I agree that Amtrak needs government subsidies, and it has from this very inception in the 1970s, the reality is Congress, once again, let's go back to Congress, who doesn't like to do their job, Congress has woefully underfunded that space. If they had funded the Amtrak service the same way they had funded road services and building highways and replacing bridges and so forth in this country over the last 60 years, since the 1970s when Amtrak was created by taking it from all of the other private companies that were no longer able to run those services profitably, you would see all sorts of improvements. Right now, the only track that Amtrak actually owns that its own is the Northeast Corridor. And funny enough, what is the one place that has the highest ridership in the country? It's the Northeast Corridor. Amtrak is investing billions of dollars in replacing bridges and putting in new tunnels, all sorts of things with states and other local governments throughout the area to improve the space on the train tracks between Boston and Washington, D.C. That would have been the case in multiple areas outside of Chicago, from San Francisco to LA, throughout the Golden Triangle in Texas. All of that would have already been done decades ago if Congress had paid attention, and those areas would be just as profitable as the Northeast Corridor is today. It's also kind of funny that we're talking about this right now with the new administration that we have, considering that Amtrak had the largest increase in ridership it's ever had in its history in 2024. And it now is on track to once again have the full Northeast Corridor being fully profitable and potentially being able to use those profits to do additional expansion for new routes throughout the country. It could be done well. But the idea that it's okay for the government to starve something so that it doesn't work, and then say the only way to fix it is to give it to a private company, and then have the private company fail, which is exactly what happened with the automakers during the 2008 financial crisis, and then have to have the government come in and bail those private companies out with tax dollars, while all the profits that they get to make afterward get to go to shareholders rather than paying us, that's a scam that everyone should be aware of. I believe in privatization of most things. We should privatize, like they do in Ogden and countless cities across the country, things like waste management, picking up your trash. Privatize being able to come out and fix sewer lines and to fix water lines coming in and out of your house. That makes sense. Privatizing competition with schools makes some sense. Potentially creating an option so that you could control better what you're doing with your own retirement funds when you lose Social Security. That makes sense. Those are all issues we should talk about. What we should not do is lambaste the public-private partnerships we already have because Congress was too cheap to pay the bill. I'm James Humphreys. I know that this is going to be a hard subject. There are a lot of hard stuff to do in the coming days. It's a short episode right now. We wanted to be a little bit more fun, but the reality is things like deportations and tariffs and other things are weighing on the population right now, and our country is going through some serious issues. We're going to get into those a little bit more with some updates in the next few days. I thought this would be a nice fun break from that we could talk about real policy that's affecting the country at the moment. I look forward to seeing all of your comments. Please like and subscribe if you like this content, and we'll do more of this in the coming days. Thanks, and have a great day.